Hi there, and welcome back to the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast. I'm Ryan Burt, joined as always by the founder of the Junior Golf Hub, Roger Nick. Roger, certainly, I think a real key that the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast has established is you start to hear from men's and women's coaches from all over the country. Of course, we've had Division One national champion coaches. We've had, top 35, top 100, top 150 coaches on the show. We've had Division Two. We've had NAIA for men's and women's. And while every coach ultimately has a little bit of a different philosophy, certainly some coaches have talked much more about how the portal is their future. Some coaches not so much. They like the old style, and certainly the very top coaches are going to probably stick mostly with taking the best junior players and then maybe adding an All-American fifth-year guy. But for the most part, the messaging about the type of player, regardless of what level, it's been remarkable to me without any of them knowing what the other one said. They've essentially, Roger, all said the same thing of the type of person and player they're looking for.
Yeah, they have, and I think that's an indication of what golf is really doing now, right? I mean, you got a lot of these young athletes who are coming into golf and making golf their sport, if you will. And I think these coaches are starting to recognize that, hey, if I can get an athlete who's played other sports, team sports in particular, that's learned how to kind of deal with adversities, wins and losses, learn how to deal with teams, learn how to deal with travel. I think they're going to find that they can find their way, right? Especially if they're in an environment that's going to continue helping them to develop as a golfer, right? Because they already have the skill sets as an athlete to kind of deal with, hey, I didn't win today. What do I need to do tomorrow, right? So I think these coaches are realizing that athletes that can hit it far, control their golf ball, and obviously score with the component of, hey, I know how to deal with adversity, is going to make a stronger team.
You know, I'm wondering, and obviously, I come from this from a different point perspective sometimes than you do. I look back to my own parenting, certainly find flaws in the way. I didn't know a whole lot about junior golf, kind of got into the system, ended up with a young athlete that at age 12, 13 was one of the better players in the country. So you get into that game. I never heard a parent, and I'm just curious what your thoughts on this are. At 12 or 13, and this, you see it in other sports. You see it in baseball in particular, where, and this is kind of opposite of what you just said with the team thing. But what do you think about taking an 11, 12, 13-year-old out of tournaments almost entirely? And as we listen to the coaches, the one constant is speed. I mean, every single coach, men, male, female, regardless of the level, they are looking for a certain amount of speed, as that is where this game obviously has gone. How far can you hit it? If you can hit it far, I'll figure out a way to make you a good player. I'm wondering if we're not going to a stage, and I wonder if I should have, if in that regard, at 12, 13, completely stepping away from tournaments, because newsflash, it means nothing. I mean, you could have a lot of trophies at 12 and 13. They mean nothing. But you sacrifice a little bit probably on fundamentals. You sacrifice a little bit on building a golf swing that at 17, 18 might be more productive. What do you think about, and that's really out there, I know. I mean, taking your son or daughter out of junior golf and just concentrating. Maybe it's not that, maybe it's not taking them out. But what do you think about the idea of it at that kind of age where they have made a decision, they love this game, they want to play college or professional golf, and focusing on the one thing that every coach says they're looking for?
Well, I think that's a very interesting concept. But I do think, Ryan, I think you can't take away the idea of developing tournament experience, right? Because tournament experience is different than golf experience, different than range experience, different than everything else that you're going to have. And because you don't get to hit the shot over, that in itself is so valuable in the development of a golfer, right? Let's call it a golfer, not just a swinger, right? So if you're a swinger of the golf club that's really fast, but don't know how to actually put it in context and transfer that skill into play, it really does matter, right? So I would say there's probably moments in time, which is probably, which is why I created the Golf Performance Center in the Northeast, was to give them a natural break away from playing golf to working on developing skills and physical skills, technical skills, and mental skills away from the golf course, so that you're not worried about the results, right? So, because I think what ends up happening, to your point, is parents look at winning trophies at 12, 13, 14 as this, oh, well, my kid's going to win and he's going to get recruited, or she's going to get recruited from the top schools because they won this national championship at 12. To your point, it doesn't pan out most of the time.
Yeah, I would say that was never ever my thought was about what it would mean.
Yeah.
Maybe it speaks to my competitive nature, whether I'm playing foursquare or chess or checkers or golf.
Yeah.
I throw everything out the window when I get in a competition, and the only thing, and it's a flaw. I mean, I'm too competitive. I've been told it my whole life. I mean, but in that competition, and I gave you a story that, went to a swing coach, made a change, went out and started practicing, had a tournament 6 days later. And my son said, you tell me, I can do it my way and I could shoot 3 under right now, or I could do what we were just taught and I can shoot 80. You decide.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked him in the face and said, shoot 3 under. And
yeah.
And it was the wrong decision. It was so short term. And it wasn't about winning a bunch at 12 to get recruited. In my particular case, it was when I got in a competition as a parent. And by the way, that speaks to the problem right there. It was you're playing to win. And we'll bring in the head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers, Brian May, for more on this conversation. Coach, thanks so much for joining us on the Hub of Junior Golf podcast. The conversation Roger and I are having, and it's a good one, is I said, it's interesting. We've had coaches from all different levels on this podcast. We've had the national champion coaches for men and women. We've had top 35, top 50, top 100, top 200, Division I, Division II, Division III. And at the end of the day, men's or women's, every coach, when we ask them, one of the things they're really looking for in a recruit, almost to a man or a woman, every coach has said, well, we want speed. That's really something that you need today, etc. No shocker, right? I said, starting the podcast today, I wonder if I would go back in time with my junior golfer who was winning every tournament at 12 across the nation, but didn't have great club head speed, but was a really great scorer of the ball, a really great player, if I should have taken time away and concentrated on, I mean, we now know for sure that you can gain speed. You can gain massive speed if you concentrate on the things that make the golf swing faster. And the reality is you have all these trophies at 12, 13, and 14, and they mean 0.0. They don't, I mean, they were great in the time, some of the best moments of my life. I mean, they were wonderful, but in the long-term goal of every golfer, when that golfer makes the decision, I want to be a Division I golfer, I want to play college golf, I want to aspire to be on the LPGA or PGA Tour, there are a lot of requirements, but certainly speed seems to be the one thing that everyone is in search of. How important is it to you, Coach? Sorry for the long-winded question. Thanks for coming on the podcast. And what do you think of that crazy idea?
Well, first off, thank you all for having me. I really appreciate the time to sit down and kind of talk through some of these issues. you're not wrong. I think speed is 100% something that every coach looks at, like you mentioned, top to bottom across the board. Um, I think in women's golf, especially, golf courses are continuing to grow. I think on the men's side, you're seeing everything's kind of capped out, right? And these guys are bombing it everywhere and hitting wedges into every green. And the golf courses can't grow and can't get any bigger. On the women's side, there is this notion that we've got to get to a certain number. We've got to get to 66 and 6,700 yards to make this a viable golf course on the women's side. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but as it's happening, speed and distance are very, very important. I think if anybody watched the national championship coverage over the last couple of days and you see the firmness of the greens, you see the hole locations that are being put out there on the national stage, speed is important because the closer you are, the better chance you have to put a lower club in your hand, a wedge in your hand, create more spin, create more height to come into these greens and attack golf courses in a way that somebody that doesn't have that may struggle with. Um, Not that they can't do it, and there's plenty of players out there that are proving that notion wrong every day. That distance may not be the only thing, but it is a massive factor, and one that in recruiting we pay a lot of attention to, specifically on the women's side.
Well, Coach. With that being said, I mean, you've done a massive turnaround there at Indiana, which is awesome. Congrats on what the program's doing. What are you doing differently in recruiting to make this happen, or what are you doing differently in practices to get your players better to make this happen?
Well, thank you. It's been quite the couple of years in turning this program around. First and foremost, in recruiting, it's sitting here and hitting refresh on the transfer portal, which has become a massive asset for us here at Indiana. But across the board in recruiting, we look for the physical piece. I think that's important. Like we just talked about, the distance, the speed, being able to recreate ball flights and have some consistency there. And then there's a component that it's really hard to find, which is just the passion for the game and the competitiveness for the game. Ryan, you talked a minute ago about that 12-year-old self of winning trophies, and winning breeds winning, and learning how to win and knowing how to win and knowing how to close out a tournament. Understanding that winning is not necessarily just having your A game all the time. Winning is playing really well with your B game, setting yourself up to make sure that when you do have stretches of holes where the A game shows up, or days or weeks, that you're prepared to take advantage of it. So there's two parts to that. Obviously the physical piece, but the golf IQ, understanding how to win, understanding how to compete, when it's not the greatest, I think is really important, and something that's overlooked and something that's actually really hard to find in recruiting these days.
And would you agree that that's gained over time, right? I don't think that without experiences, it's very hard for a player to gain golf IQ, right? I mean, I think there's also, and this is a conversation Ryan and I were just having too, about just taking that time and focusing on speed and maybe pulling out of tournaments and so forth, and forget about the trophies, but gaining the knowledge, the golf IQ of what to do in certain situations is so important for a player to, mature into a better golfer, right? What do you look for, and what would you tell parents to help their, kids get better at doing that?
Yeah, I agree. I think there is a balance. I mean, I think there's a balance of playing and competing, and then there's a balance of obviously working on your game. And the younger you are, I think there's value in a lot of that. What we look for, and I think what a lot of coaches look for specifically at this level, is what is your level of competition? Are you playing enough? Are you gaining the experience, like you just mentioned, in tournament competition under the gun, and figuring out how to maneuver your way through a tournament? Obviously, in college golf, everything is kind of sped up. So you have a lot of 36-18 days. You have a lot of back-to-back weeks where you're competing Monday, Tuesday. You come home for 3 days. You qualify for 3 days. You're off maybe one day, and then we travel to another tournament. So there's a lot of cadence that comes through that, and understanding how to prepare and how to prepare through playing. I think that's really important. There is knowledge that is gained there that is invaluable. You cannot find that on a driving range. You cannot find that in a hitting bay, in a lesson tee, figuring out how to do it under the gun and what those nerves are going to feel like, what the pressure feels like, and understanding that that's a privilege. Like getting in those situations is important, and the knowledge that you gain from it can really only be gained in those situations. Nobody can tell you what that feels like. Nobody can talk you through it without being in those shoes and being in that moment.
All right, Coach. You opened up the box, so I'm gonna take the lid off, and we're gonna get into it a little bit. And I actually think the first thing I want to preface this with is this is the Hub of Junior Golf podcast, and the first thing a parent or player may think when we say the word portal is that it doesn't imply to them. And I actually think, as I really explore this and study this, that it actually affects junior golfers almost as much as it affects the college players that are in the portal. And I'll tell you why. And your answer will go a long way to that. But there obviously are way more junior golfers than there are Power 5 positions. I say it all the time. There's five players there's 6 players, 5 players that travel, that play. And the reality is, if that team has seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, there might only be 1 or 2 spots for your incoming year at those programs. So if your goal as a junior golfer is to play in a Power 5 school and it doesn't happen, one, it doesn't mean you're not a great player. It means that what I just said, it's not, I mean, that is massively shrunk down if your goal is Power 5. So the first question is, if these players go somewhere else where they can play right away, and you said you're refreshing the portal, why is the portal to you so important? Why are those players arguably more important than a junior golfer at the moment?
Well, first and foremost is experience. We're able to look at numbers. We're able to look at scoring averages. We're able to look at stats that are in our world and not in a junior golf world. For better or worse, that's just the reality of it. College golf, for the most part, unless you're at a super high level of junior golf, the golf courses are longer. The golf courses are tougher. There is competition at home. There is qualifying. There are all these things that come into it. There's part of being on a team and thriving in a team setting that a lot of junior golfers may not have. Specifically now in 2024, when there's specialization at such a young age, a lot of kids don't get coached until they get to college. So there's a lot of experience that we can gather from just somebody that's played 1 or 2 years at another program. I think that's a valuable thing from a coach standpoint. That's just an understanding at this level. There's a maturity to that piece. And then there's an unknown to the junior golf world on how that player may translate. Again, i.e. to your 12-year-old self, how that winner at 12 translates to a junior golfer at 16, 17, how they may translate to a college player when all of these other things are kind of put into motion. So the portal is very valuable there. I think back to what you talked about a minute ago, the portal now has become something that players at 16 look at as part of their world. They say, well, if I can't get to college A that I want to be at, maybe I go to college F and play 2 years, gain some experience, and then I can transfer. I don't know that that's necessarily the right way to do it, but it's a way that is happening. And so understanding that as a junior golfer, 15, 16 years old, I may have this one place in mind, and that one place may only have 1 spot. They may not have any spots in your year. So not necessarily putting your eggs in one basket. I think the transfer portal is full of players who thought they wanted a handful of things from a college golf experience, and they may have not gotten any of those at their current place because they were looking at ranking, or they were looking at what the team had done 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, and not necessarily how it can help their situation specifically.
Roger, I want to ask you a direct question. As the founder of the Junior Golf Hub, that certainly is our arguably, not arguably, it is the best roadmap to college golf, because you've spoke very profound over the years about how many spots there are available in college golf. Maybe not Power Five, but if you want to play college golf, you can. What do you think about the idea, and who is this right for? If your aspiration is the LPGA or PGA Tour, and that really is the goal, is it almost taking that 1 or 2 year approach to go somewhere, Roger, at any level, and then revisit a move to a bigger program at a higher level?
I mean, Ryan, that's a great question. And I would say, yeah, I mean, that's my position on it. My position is, you want to gain some experience at that next level. And I think, as Coach May just elaborated, is you're taking an athlete at another school who's already learned to be away from mom and dad, be on their own, to qualify for a team, to go and compete on a regular daily basis to the cadence that he just talked about, is so invaluable to a coach, and versus a rising senior high school player who's never been away from mom and dad, who pretty much mom and dad probably carry and pack their golf bags, right? I mean, that's one of the toughest things. But I also think just that added years of maturity as a person is just so valuable, right? They learn how to deal with mistakes differently. They learn how to deal with life differently. They learn how to deal with those things off the course in a much better way. So you've got somebody coming in that's so just better suited, most likely, right? That I would also go back and say, I would argue that if a player is looking to play on the LPGA Tour or the PGA Tour or professional golf at the highest level, why college? Why even play college golf, right? I mean, there have been many, many, many cases that says it's not for everyone. And I would say college isn't for everyone. And I know, we talk about this at our academy. I just had this conversation with a parent yesterday morning, that college may not be right for your son. And it's okay. It's just a different way.
Yeah, I massively disagree with that. Massively. And I'll tell you why. That's going with no safety net into life. Listen, I guess if you don't have a plan B, maybe you try to make your plan A work. But look at the numbers of players that make it on the PGA and LPGA Tour. I don't want any part of those statistics without a plan B, Roger. I mean, I guess if you're, Tiger, if you're, it's obviously worked for Nick Dunlap, Jordan's. I mean, it's worked for. I mean, Rose Zhang went to college, for goodness sake. I mean, I massively disagree with that. I think the old saying, you can always go back to college, I guess, but you probably can't go to college for free, and you probably didn't make any money if you're. I think college is I think it's the perfect spot, because you are forming a plan B where you can be successful if your plan A doesn't work out, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's your opinion. That's a good one. It's a good one, Ryan. I don't listen, personally, I don't disagree. I love education and I'm all about being educated, but I think we get caught up, and I'm sure, Coach May, you probably hear these conversations or have these conversations all the time with recruits, which is they want to be the best player in the world, right? They're going to say, I want to be the best player in the world, but yet they put so little time and effort into being the best player in the world. Okay, so it's very hard to be that successful with a plan B. And I think it's okay. I advise our players all the time, hey, listen, get a good education. If you can, do the things that's required of you to be the best player that you want or reach your goals, then that's just a natural progression in gaining kind of ground on the mountain, if you will, going to college. And that should take place versus I'm doing it specifically to be recruited. That's different, right? And I think that's a means to an end, which in most cases and Coach May, I don't want to put these words in your mouth, but that's why also looking at a college transfer portal player is they're already there. They're already looking for that college experience. They already have that experience versus taking someone who says, I want to go to college, but do they actually really want to go play college golf? They just want to maybe do something that parents have asked them to do, right? Hey, get college scholarship because we need the college scholarship. And then they go there and they basically don't put the effort into being the best college golfer or best teammate. And I think that's a real tough one that I think college coaches, coaches are being put in, which is why the portal is now so prevalent. Coach, I don't know. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last part you touched on is very true, and I think it's one of the things that are harder for coaches to see. I think when you're in the recruiting world, you get the best of everybody. You're getting the best face that they're going to put on. They're going to tell you everything that you want to hear. They're going to say yes. They're going to be bright-eyed. They're going to be ready to go. So for us as college coaches and our program specifically, we're going to ask a lot of questions. We're going to make sure that your goals line up with what we're trying to do. Our program specifically is not for everybody. That's okay. We just talked about how many programs there are and how many coaches there are and how many different ways there are to do things. For us, the path to wherever people want to go, whether that's being a All-American at the college level, whether that's winning national championships at the college level, or whether that's playing at the professional level, it's not, the beginning of that is not junior golf. It's just another step on the ladder. So when you get to college golf, that is not the, hey, I've made it. Hey, I've arrived. Because I'm in program A, now I'm going to be a professional golfer. That's just not how it works. So we talk a lot about investment, understanding that college golf, specifically at our level, provides a lot of resources. We give everything we can possibly give and everything a player from a golf standpoint would absolutely need to make it to the professional level. But a lot of people think that that's where it stops. The investment into those resources is what's going to make or break a player's experience. The investment into those resources is going to help that player grow. If just by being next to those resources, a player thinks that they're going to be at the next level, that's not how it works. And there is plenty of athletes that can tell you that they didn't invest enough, that they didn't try hard enough, they didn't practice hard enough, they didn't use those college golf resources enough that were put in front of them to make it. Going back to your question about, is college for everyone? I don't think it's for everyone, but man, it's a massive, massive, massive resource. And all the players that Ryan just mentioned that are at the highest level and have played at the highest level, I would imagine if you asked them how their college golf experience was, it was one that they really, really, really thrived in, one that they took advantage of all of the resources, a Spieth at Texas and a Tiger at Stanford, a Rose Zhang at Stanford. They didn't just show up and Stanford made them who they are. They invested into those resources. They invested into those coaching staffs, and they are where they are because of that. Plan B, the college education and the college experience, I think, is something that can happen simultaneously to plan A. I think somebody getting from junior golf to the professional ranks, yes, there's a handful of players that have done that and skipped that. And I kind of liken it to Major League Baseball. But the players that have gone through it have this other thing on the side. They've been coached. They have teammates. They have lifelong friends. They have the alumni base at their institutions, people that can help them get that plan A and continue on that path. So I think those two things can happen simultaneously, and you can get the best of both worlds if you invest in them.
Coach, let's move it to the junior golf ranks because as popular as the portal is, certainly you and about every other Power 5 coach, if that right junior does put themselves in front of you, certainly there is a spot for them. What at Indiana are you looking for? Do you prefer someone from that area of the country? Are you willing to go anywhere? What is your junior golf recruiting process?
Yeah, I think 30 years ago, I think a lot of coaches talked about locations and where players are from and making sure that they get players from certain areas. And I think that's a beginning of it. I think, at Indiana, we're doing our best to make sure that we can win the state first and foremost. We've got to find the best juniors and we've got to attract the best juniors from around our area. I think that's really important. But at the same time, golf is a global game now, and it is very much accessible from every corner of the world. And I think if you look at college golf and college golf rosters, it shows that. And so we have to be willing to continue to look across the globe. Like you mentioned before, we're looking for one or two players a year. So out of this vast landscape that is junior golf, we're trying to pick out these couple of needles in the haystack that fit our program. And so obviously the physical piece we talked about before has to be there. Golf IQ being really high has to be there. We're looking for people who want to compete. That aren't scared of competition, that kind of understand that competition breeds growth. Whether the results are good or bad, there is growth to be had in there if we pay attention to it the right way. And players that are really willing to, like we said before, invest in what we can offer. We're looking for players who have high goals and aren't afraid to put those on paper and say, hey, listen, this is where I want to be. This is where I want a team to be. And let's figure out the process from where I am now and how we can get there. So we're excited about it. I think we're pretty clear on what we're looking for. And now we're just scouring the earth to find them, one or two a year.
Coach, with that being said, we have we launched the Junior Golf Hub rankings, which is a slightly different ranking system that's out there right now, where we're looking for players to play more golf. Right? We want kids who don't play the ranking game system, if you will, the way it is currently. And as we start thinking about this, for players and coaches, right, when finding that right fit. I'm going to ask you a very difficult question, which is, would you look at a player who's played golf to get their rankings high and stop playing golf their senior year because their ranking is high to get recruited versus a player who, and then let's say that player also has a scoring average of, let's say 74, 73, right? Let's make them really, really, solid, right? 73, but stop playing golf, stop playing tournaments because their rankings might go down, versus a player who continues to play golf, who may have a slightly higher scoring average, but boy, they are, competing, and they're competing every other week or every week. Their rankings maybe, a little bit lower. Maybe they are in maybe 1,000 versus 300. What's your impression there of the player?
I mean, I'm looking at the player who's competitive. Excuse me.
Bless you.
I think the player that wants to compete, that understands the downfalls of competing if we don't play well, but is willing to go through that, I think is very, very valuable. I think if we're comparing apples to apples, yeah, on paper, player A that's ranked 300 is probably going to look better, but that's where the conversations come into place. That's where the recruiting calls come in. That's where the visits come into play, and understanding the mindset behind the player and what are they doing and why are they doing it. If a player has a goal of being an all Big Ten player here at IU or an All-American nationally, they're not going to sit out the last two events of the year to keep that ranking. At least I hope not. Guys in football are skipping bowl games now, but
Yeah.
completely different reasons. But
Yeah.
At the same time, that competitive edge is really important. And so if we know, and it is known, that a player is not playing just to keep a ranking, I think that's a conversation that's going to have to be had, and a difficult one probably between us and the parents and the player, and just trying to understand the reasons why, and then talk about the value of competition and how we view it, and how we would view it at our program, so that they wouldn't come in here thinking that, we're valuing a score. It's much more than that. And we're also teaching much more than that as coaches. We're teaching the value of competition. We're teaching the value of failure and how important that is to growth. We're trying to have our players understand the values of all of these things that come with golf, and not just a score on paper, and not just a ranking in a ranking system.
Coach, last thing, and we'll let you go. We really appreciate your time. Certainly there is a ton of conversation, and the parents, especially the junior game, are always very interested because they don't really understand it. They just hear NIL, NIL, NIL. They want to know, what is available. I'm not really asking you about NIL. If you have it, great. But I'm more asking for the parents. If you go to Indiana, give us some of the idea of the services and things that are available to an IU women's player on the golf team that is extra, that no one else at that, or a regular student is not receiving. Some of the benefits you have of being a varsity athlete at Indiana.
Yeah, I'm glad you said regular. I think that's really important and something that we touch on in recruiting. It's like, as a student athlete at Indiana, you don't get to be a regular student. You get to be so much more than that. And us understanding the value of being a student athlete and taking advantage and giving these students these resources. So as a student athlete, yes, you may not have time to enjoy the benefits of studying extra hours or going and get a part-time job or whatever, working your way through it. But you also don't have the benefits of having a personalized strength and conditioning coach. You don't have sports psych at your fingertips. You don't have a trainer who you can meet with daily, weekly to take care of your body and the nagging injuries that may come with the travel and all of the things that are being a college athlete. You don't have coaches that are pushing you to get better. You don't have leadership and life skills programs that are teaching you about life after your sport, whenever that may be. You don't have an alumni base that is looking at you saying, hey, as an athlete at Indiana, we understand that you have these values of hard work and teamwork and understanding how to be coachable. You just don't get those things as a normal student. And as an athlete at IU, we recognize that. We put those things in front of you. Time management is really important. We give you people that are going to help with that as well. We're going to give you academic advisors. We're going to give you tutors that are going to help you stay on top of your schoolwork as you travel and as you move around and miss class. Normal students don't get that. They have to seek those things out. They probably have to pay for most of those things. Those things are at your fingertips at Indiana. So yes, you do not get to be regular. And I think that is an advantage. I think that's an advantage that is kind of lost in 2024 in college athletics as a whole of what advantages you already have as an athlete and what's already given to you as an athlete. NIL aside and all of the things from money in your pocket aside, there is a lot of value to being a college athlete, at the highest level.
Sign me up, Coach.
Let's go.
Coach, first of all, again, congratulations on what you've built at Indiana in a short time. It speaks to what a great coach you are and understand the landscape. So congratulations. Keep it rolling. Obviously, next year you hope to be playing this time or just finishing
right.
season for sure. But congratulations again. Thanks for joining us.
Guys, thank you so much. I was happy to talk a little golf with you for a little while.
Absolutely. Thanks, Coach May.
Thank you all.
All right.
Well, that was a little different, Roger, a little different line of questioning. But boy, Coach handled it very well. I found that incredibly enlightening on a lot of different levels.
Yeah, absolutely. To be able to kind of get down and dirty a little bit is really important also, Ryan, as we know that we get so many questions every week, from parents and the athletes of, hey, what's expected or what's not expected? Is golf? Do I have to go to college? Just you and I having good banter on whether college is important or not, or, whether we should go to college, or plan A, plan B, is really important for, these athletes to hear and parents to hear, because again, college, as much as you and I might value college as a plan A, it's not for everyone. And I don't believe it is for everyone necessarily, because you know what, and everybody finds their own path. I mean, I just think it really is a personal thing.
Sure.
Yeah, we can say it's important that, okay, if you want a good job in life, and yeah, but you can say that there's a lot of successful people that didn't, finish college.
I guess my point is, if at 18, to your point, If at 18 you take college out of it and you are just trying to be the best golfer you can be, of course you would be a better player. I mean, there's no doubt. It's a simple time management game. You're now going where you could practice, if you wanted, 14 hours a day as opposed to whatever you have to with your college studies and everything. So the black and white of it is, would you be a better player? Yes, because you have more time. Does everyone have a certain goal max that they get to anyways? And what I get to is, once all these players get to the PGA Tour and LPGA Tour, it appears that most players have a point where that's who they are anyways. They are working as hard as you can. They are doing everything they can as a professional golfer with money now, because they made the PGA Tour and LPGA Tour, and they still can't get past whatever their level is. Like, there is a certain level that there is a max. Certainly, give me a player, give me a mid-range player on the PGA Tour that is really good, has made a lot of money. Billy Horschel. Let's take Billy Horschel.
I was actually, you know what's funny? That's the exact name I was going to tell you. Billy Horschel.
Right. Billy Horschel. Won a FedEx Cups, never won a major. He's never been on a Ryder Cup team. Is as meticulous and as driven as any player out there, and he's made zillions of dollars. Billy Horschel went to Florida, of course, All-American,
Yep.
And has had a great PGA Tour career. Billy Horschel has done everything, I'm going to say, in his power to be a better player, to win majors, to be better than Tiger, to be better than Phil, to be better than Rory. And he's just not. He's just not. It's not because he hasn't put the time in. It hasn't because he didn't spend every last second on his short game. It isn't because he didn't see enough coaches. With Todd Anderson forever, people talk about the amount of time he puts in. It's legendary. So why isn't he the best player in the world? Because he got to the exact the max he could get to, and whatever it is, he can't get any better to where Tiger's ceiling was different. Tiger Woods had a different ceiling.
Why do you think Tiger Woods' ceiling was different than most players?
Well, I am a big genetics person. I think that at the end of the day, that is it's certainly, and I always go back to the baseball analogy, that if you go into minor league baseball right now, there are thousands of pitchers that throw between 85 and 92. Thousands.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of them knows that if they add 4 miles an hour, they're a millionaire. All they have to do is add 4 miles per hour. So they are training to add 4 miles an hour. They are eating right. They are doing everything in the world they can to get 4 miles an hour. Guess what, Roger? 99.9% of them never get 4 miles an hour, even though they are doing everything under God's green earth to get those 4 miles an hour. Their body does not physically allow them to throw 98 miles an hour. They just can't do it. No matter how hard they try, how hard they train, they just can't do it. I think so. To your point, I think Tiger, now the whole mental part of it, willing to work harder, there's no doubt. Tiger's driven differently, but I would also say,
is it work harder or work smarter?
Oh, I would say harder. I don't think the players on the LPGA Tour and PGA Tour in a vacuum. I think, is Rose Zhang going to be the greatest player in the history of the game? I would argue no. I would argue that she will not go down as the greatest player ever to play the game on the ladies' side.
Yeah.
Is Rose Zhang training smart, practicing smart, doing everything she can to be the best player in the history of the game? I would probably put my chips in. Yes, she is, but she won't get there.
I would say, I think you're not wrong. I would say that the real tough thing there is that it's called, it's called evolution, right? Of a player, of an athlete, of a person. And if you look at Tiger's evolution, you look at Roy McIlroy's evolution, and you look at some of the greatest athletes in the world, or musicians, or whatever it is, it's where they start, right? And then what is the stimulus and what is the environment they're in when they get there, when they're going through this journey. And I think if you think about Tiger Woods in particular, you think about all the things he did to learn to control this golf ball under all types of conditions, right? He didn't worry about his golf swing technically, right, until much later in his evolution as a golfer, right? And I think so many of our young players today worry so much about how good their swing looks. Are they actually, hitting the golf ball straight in practice, versus what are the requirements of the skills that I need to build over time in all environments, from practice to learning to competitive, under stressful conditions, which is i.e. winning tournaments. That's a very, very difficult thing to do, because you even alluded to it earlier, as you're so competitive, I would rather just get the results now versus go, what's going to be in it for me later, right?
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. One of our guests on the Hubba Junior Golf Podcast, Steve Scott.
Yep.
University of Florida. Was at one point 7 or 8 up on Tiger Woods in the U.S. Am final. Steve was 21 years old. Tiger was 17.
Yeah.
And Steve says, I'd hit my driver, Tiger, who would hit his 3-wood, and he would be 40 yards past me.
Yeah.
40 yards over 36 holes. Steve says, I'm hitting 3 woods into greens. Tiger's hitting 7-iron into greens.
Yeah.
Now, was that gigantic difference in distance because Tiger worked so much harder than Steve Scott, or was Tiger's body was there a disposition that his body would be allowed him to swing faster, hit the ball further, and give him an advantage that no matter what Steve Scott did, no matter what Steve did, the advantage that Tiger had in length was not going to be overcome?
Well, I would say I would go back and put that on, okay, what did Steve Scott to do to get there to where he was in his development as a golfer? Did he work on, I don't care where the ball goes, I'm just going to swing as fast as I possibly can, which Tiger did, in many, many, instances it's been recorded or talked about that Tiger, his dad would say, Tiger, just hit it as far as you can, So he learned from a very early age that I don't have to have some kind of guardrails up to be good, right? It's just, hey, I'm going to go and get what I can get. Whereas maybe so many other golfers, maybe even a Steve Scott, was, okay, I got to hit it in the fairway. I got to get it to the green. I got to just control it. I'm going to just work on good technique.
So you don't think he was born, Tiger Woods?
I think we're all born genetically very similar. Wow. I think the environment in which we put what we have into what it is that we want to do, I think makes a bigger difference. I'm not saying that there aren't genetic, super codes, right? But yet the fact is that if you can take a super code and put them on a couch somewhere, they're not going to develop anything, right? They're going to be what they are. And so I think if you actually take the environment, and this, we have this conversation quite often about, underserved communities in golf and other sports, like what happens, right? Well, when you're competitive in an early stage of life, whether it's surviving, going in at food, making sure that you have something to eat every night, you're gonna be competitive. You're gonna, go and be better than somebody else that has never had to worry about going out and getting their food, right? So I think that is something that we tend to forget when it comes to the real development, right? And I think, if you take a Rosang, for example, I agree with you. Could she be the best player ever to play the game? Probably not. She didn't do the things required early enough in her development to gain speed. So she's missed a lot of these critical speed windows. And, these guys out there now on tour are chasing speed a lot, why you see Brian, Fitzpatrick, why is he injured? Well, he chased speed. Why are a lot of these guys getting injured now going after this? Because they've missed windows, critical developmental windows, earlier in their lives. and now they're trying to gain it on dysfunction, right? They may have functional golf movement, but they may not have good physical function, right? Which then you put function on top of dysfunction, you're just making dysfunction more functional, right? And break down, right? And I think that's what's happened a lot to these athletes today, which is why we might see a cap on somebody someday is going to surpass Tiger, right? Or surpass Jack Nicklaus or whatever it maybe Annika, right? Annika is one who, you would say probably did a lot of things right, but talking with her several times, she would say, well, I probably could have done some things better with a little bit more insights, right? Which is, I'm going to turn it back to why we created PDI was to say, hey, let's hit the critical windows on skill development, physically, mentally, and golf skills and performance metrics, right? So,
all right, 3 questions for you in that regard.
Yeah.
Roger Nickett, 1 year old.
Yep.
Is born into that family that is going to make sure that at every window you're there. One family is in the NBA. It's to put you in the NBA and make you the greatest basketball player of all time. Do you think that would have been possible?
Yeah, I think it is possible.
That you could have been the greatest basketball player to ever step foot on the earth?
Possibly.
Okay.
Possibly.
You believe that it's just hard work from that regard and being with the right training.
Well, I think the right environment, right? I think environment matters. I think if you put yourself in the right environments, right, with the right information, the right knowledge base, the right training, I definitely think it's possible, right? I think it would be possible. You could put me out in the middle of the jungle somewhere and it'd be possible that I'd be eaten by some gorilla, right? I mean, that would be fact at 1 year old.
No, I just think that inherent looking at you, there are inherited disadvantages that regardless of what, like you said, it's certainly possible. I would strongly bet that if every part of your life was to make you the best basketball player ever, I would bet that you would not be that player.
I don't know. I would probably say I don't know. I mean, it depends.
How tall are you?
Listen, I'm 6 feet tall, but Muggsy Bogues was out there too, right? I mean, so there are a lot of Allen Iverson 6'1". I mean, so you can argue that height doesn't make you the best basketball player ever.
Players have overcome that disadvantage, that genetic disadvantage of their height, for sure. It certainly seems that it would be an advantage to be 6'7", 6'8", 6'9".
Sure, absolutely, no doubt about it. It'd be an advantage.
That would allow you to.
But there's also a lot of 6'7", 6'9", basketball players who never made the NBA. 100%. Right? I mean, they got cut all the time.
For sure, there's more 6'7", 6'8" in the league than 6 foot.
No doubt.
But how it translates to golf, I find it an incredible, and obviously we've gone over today, so we hope you stuck around. But it is a incredible conversation of what is possible, and how important it is that, to your point, those windows are hit with your junior player to see what their max is.
Exactly, Ryan. The big thing for me is looking at this and saying, okay, everybody's seeking speed, but they're seeking speed by swinging a golf club faster, or there are tools out there that are made, the speed sticks, the you name it. There's a ton of them out there, right? But the fact is if I played other sports, I played soccer, I played softball, I played baseball, I played basketball, I'm putting myself athletically, and I'm calling on my nervous system athletically to create those things without having to think about them, right? Versus I can't manufacture speed if I don't have the nerve firing to go, hey, muscle fire faster, because I've never done that before, right? So if the parents of young athletes could do anything right now, is look for a trainer who understands speed windows and true physical development, not just golf swing technique development, but good physical development. There's a lot of misnomer out there about, you can't lift weights, you can't do power training, you can't do these, it's too early, you're going to hurt the growth plate. There is no research that says that whatsoever, right? It's just a misnomer. It's doctors protecting themselves, right? So there are lots of things that athletes can do, young athletes could be doing and should be doing, to develop speed, not just swinging a golf club faster.
Well, it's a wonderful conversation
Yeah.
again, and certainly for training, for colleges, for PDI, to check out the new junior golf ranking system. JuniorGolfHub.com is your home for all of this. When you're done with the podcast, go check it out. Start to move through that. Create a profile for your son or daughter. JuniorGolfHub.com is the home to all of this incredible information. With that said, Roger, again, as always, thank you to our director and producer, Michael Nick. Great job, Michael, as always, lining up our wonderful guests. They just continue to deliver. And we will see you back here real soon on the Hub of Junior Golf Podcast.